If you've ever taken a photo where you maybe didn't get the composition quite right, you may need to expand the canvas or the frame of that photo, and there are a couple of ways to do that. Today I'm going to show you how you can expand your photo using Photoshop's Generative Expand. This does use Photoshop's AI features, so if you're not into using those, this might not be the technique for you, and you might want to look into something like Content Aware Fill, of which there are lessons on that inside the learning journey. So this is just a quick little preview at how to use Generative Expand. You don't need to have really any Photoshop knowledge or skills. It's really quite straightforward, unless you want to fix a couple of the issues that I'm going to show you as we go along. So first thing you need to do is just to open up your photo in Photoshop, however you normally go about doing that, from either your Explorer or your Finder, or from Lightroom or from Camera Raw. However it is that you normally get your photo into Photoshop is fine. You can see I've got my photo here, and I had Journey in a quite centered composition as I was expecting him to look at me, and then he looked to the side, which means that he is still quite centered and we need a lot more space to the left hand side. Now usually I take extra photos in this situation for a panorama, which is also something that I have a lot of lessons on inside the learning journey, but if that's not something that you do or that you know how to do, then this trick might save your butt in those situations. So we've got our photo in Photoshop. We're going to come here to the crop tool. Just make sure that your ratio is whatever you need it to be. 3:2 is a normal horizontal photo. You can see we actually also need a little bit more space under his feet, and we're going to give him some more space on the sides. So you have a couple of options here. You can just drag out from the corners in whatever direction you want to go. You can drag from the side, and it's all going to expand in different ways. So figure out what you need to do and what option is going to work best for you, but I think we can probably do something like that. Next thing we need to do is make sure that delete cropped pixels is not ticked. It's not really that important in this situation, except for this little edge here. If this is ticked, all these pixels here are going to be deleted, which means if later on I want to actually undo this and expand it back in that direction, then I probably can't do that because those pixels are deleted. The other thing we need to change is the fill, so we need to change to Generative Expand. One important thing to note at this point is that we are going to be generating a fairly large size image, which means that we are going to be generating in low resolution. I'm going to show you a solution for that afterwards, but just be aware that if you are generating something more than 1024 pixels, it's going to be lower resolution. So that is just something to keep in mind. Now you see we've got our little generation box down here. We don't need to type anything in here. All we need to do is hit generate. Okay, so you'll see we've got our 3 options here, and you can click through them and choose which one you like the look of the most. You can also generate again if you don't like any of them, and we can also see them with large thumbnails. So I always like to check the edges to see if there's any weird lines or anything that I don't particularly like the look of. Like this, is that part of, nope, that was just how it was, so that is fine. I like that it's added a little bit of foreground there. I don't love what's happening at the top there. So maybe we go with this one. This one's sort of got a little bit more of a bush at the top there, and you can see that it has filled it in. So this is where it's important to note the difference in the resolution. So let's see if we can see how there's sort of this weird texture around on this side compared to here. Now this side is a little bit noisier, but it's also this sort of hatching kind of grid texture that you can see here especially. This is because we've generated it in low resolution. So this is where things get a little bit more Photoshop technical. If you're posting something for social media, what you've got here is fine. You actually don't need higher resolution. I can guarantee that nobody would look at this photo, even on my 4K screen, zoomed out as it is right now. I don't think that you could tell that that's been generated, except for a little bit of this sort of weirdness that's going on at the top here. But otherwise it's pretty seamless, and the low resolution thing really doesn't matter. So if this is for social media, that's about all you need to do. You can now continue on with your edits. If you are wanting to give this photo to a client, we have a couple of options. One is to kind of smooth out this effect. So we're going to need to go to filter, come to noise, and we're going to go to dust and scratches. You can see that this has made it really nice and smooth. You can play with the radius, and what you want to do is find a point where those lines and that weird texture kind of disappear. So it's probably somewhere like that. Then we're just going to hit OK. But now we have a secondary problem, which is that this is really smooth and this is kind of noisy. So we actually want to add some noise to our generated area, which I know sounds really weird, but we don't want it to be so obvious because there's such a difference in texture here. It's really normal for your photos to have pixel texture, and when you get rid of it in one specific area only, you can often draw more attention to that area than you necessarily want. So we're going to go filter again, noise, and then add noise. And again, you can play with the amount here, but I think for our purposes that looks pretty okay, and I'm going to hit OK. So you can see now it's pretty close. Nobody's going to be investigating it that closely. If for some reason you need this to be high resolution, you have also got a couple of options. One is to get a plugin like this Pix Imperfect Compositing plugin that you can get from the Adobe Creative Cloud. The other option is to do it yourself. So essentially you have to break this whole area into sections no bigger than 1024 pixels. So if I get my rectangular marquee tool here, because we're working with nice straight lines, and I just drag this across until I get to 1024-ish, something like that. If you have a look just above my cursor, you'll see the number of pixels that has been selected. So, you know, that would also be fine. And then we can just generative fill that one area. Again, you don't really need any special Photoshop skills for this one. We just need to be able to make a selection and then hit generate. And then it's a really tedious job because you have to go all the way along, which is where that plugin can come in handy, but it's not without its faults. And since it's, you know, a third-party plugin, I'm not going to talk about it too much. So then again, once one part has been generated, we could choose the generation that we like the most, and then make another 1000 pixel selection, hit generative fill and generate. And you would do this all the way along until the whole thing has been generated. Because these are much smaller areas and it's under Adobe's threshold for high resolution generations, you should see that the quality of this would be better. So if we zoom in and have a look, I'm going to turn on our other one so you can see the difference, hopefully. And I'm going to turn off my little things. So there is our original generation where we did the whole thing. And now I'm going to turn on my new one, and it looks much more seamless and much more like the original. It has the same noise, it has the same kind of texture, everything matches a lot better, but obviously it's going to be a much slower process. So this is one way that you can expand your canvas. It is pretty easy, and like I said, you don't need to do the full process if this is just a photo for social media. But hopefully that helps you if you find yourself in a situation where you do need to expand your photo at some point in the future. And let me know below if you have any questions.